To most, everyday fears include tripping in public or missing the bus, but in many Latin American countries, those are the last things on people's minds. The constant threat of robbery, murder, and abduction put parents on high alert and make those smaller fears seem much more trivial. This is seen best in Mexico and Colombia, where anti-crime groups claim that, aside from the politically tumultuous country of Colombia, you are more likely to be abducted for ransom in Mexico than almost anywhere in the world. No other piece of modern media depicts this crime more vividly than Tony Scott's Man on Fire, a film depicting several violent abductions in Mexico City. Although Hollywood shed light on the reality that many Latin American families face, most stories go overlooked and untold. My cousin Sergio Barrio was kidnapped in Colombia and held for over 3 months in the jungle for a ransom. People who live in this constant fear may feel hopeless, but by paralleling scenes from the film and Sergio's experience, I plan on exploring the possibility of new technological advancements stopping these crimes while still maintaining an individual's personal privacy. This new technology I am referring to is VeriChip's radio frequency identification chip. It is a small probe that can be ejected under the skin while still transmitting radio waves that are unique to your own chip. This has created a lot of public backlash regarding people's right to privacy, and it has even prompted states like California to prohibit employers from implanting RFID chips into their employees. The Food and Drug Administration, or FDA, has approved the RFID chip to be used in humans for medical uses only, such as retrieving health and medical histories. But VeriChip's biggest human chip market is Mexico, where members of the Attorney General's office have already gotten the chip implanted. Unfortunately, not everyone living under these circumstances have the money and resource to get these chips implanted under their skin. In the film, Man on Fire, the main character is a young girl named Pita. Her family is wealthy and would be able to afford the VeriChip's newest creation, but my cousin Sergio would never be able to afford this, and our family does not have the resources to put a chip into every child in the family. Although Pita and Sergio differ greatly in their socioeconomic backgrounds, their stories of abduction are similar. Their stories begin with the abduction itself. Both Sergio and Pita were abducted in a violent fashion while on their way home. Pita was taken from her bodyguard on her way out of piano lessons in the middle of the street, while Sergio, on the other hand, was taken on his way home from the market. In both events, vehicles blocked the road and guns were used to subdue the victims to cooperate. Sergio recalls, "They pointed a big rifle in my cheek really hard and forced me into a military jeep. They put a cloth bag over my head and told me that if I talked or looked around, they would simply shoot me and throw me out of the car." Supporters of the chip would argue that the rescue would benefit greatly if they could immediately start following the radio frequency of the abductee. Although the initial abduction would seem to be the most horrifying part, one could assume that the car ride is the easiest part of the entire situation by listening to Sergio's story and observing scenes from the film. And during the weeks and months of captivity is where most victims lose their life, and according to the film's opening credits, 70% of the victims do not survive. Both kidnap victims were kept in small dark rooms, but Pita and the other victims in the film were kept in indoor cages, while Sergio was kept in a small windowless shed with no roof. After the first several days, he was forced to march with his abductors through the jungle. The film does not reveal whether or not Pita was tortured, but in the opening credits, the same kidnappers have another young hostage and they cut off his ear and sent it to his family. This is done to rush the ransom payment, and Sergio's experience was no different. In the process of negotiating price and terms, he lost 2 fingers to a set of wire cutters, and they were each mailed to his father as a reminder. Here, supporters of the chip would run into several problems. If the victim is taken to a remote location, the radio wave would not travel far enough to reach the police. Also, if the kidnappers are willing to cut off body parts, they might look for the chip in the victim and cut it out by any means necessary. Although the abduction from the film and my cousin did have some differences, they both end in their safe arrival home, and many supporters agree that in order to see even more victims be returned home safely, the chip has to be used by a broader consumer base. It may be unrealistic to assert that an implantable tag is the key to this problem in Latin America, because VeriChip's corporation has not yet built a GPS in their chips and radio waves are not always reliable. They claim on their website, after their company was crucified by the media, that their technology is not to be used for privacy breaching. The film, Man on Fire, and real-life situations have proven that something needs to be done about the kidnapping epidemic in Latin America. Although this new implantable technology seems to currently have the best angle so far, It is difficult to tell whether or not the chip will succeed, and most recently, 2 hackers were successful in hacking the chip's technology. It is unreasonable to assert that the chip could stop an abduction completely, but I would like to explore similar instances in which the chip would prove to be very effective and useful. The express kidnapping is slowly becoming more and more popular in Mexico. It is when an unsuspecting person is briefly abducted, forced to withdraw money from ATMs, and then released. Mexican government statistics say that there are about 10 express kidnaps a day and over 40,000 a year. But again, how practical would it be to implant a chip in every citizen? It is clear that the technology is still in its infant phase and has many years before it can be marketable to the masses. It currently has the potential to aid kidnappings, but its technology is limited. With further testing and research, it may become a possibility, but for now it is only an expensive luxury exclusive to the well-connected and the rich. Whether or not the chip is ethical, invasive, or a weapon against crime depends on which side of the border you stand on. The beauty of this technology lies in the beholder, but the question will always remain, what is more important, your safety or your privacy?